So, hi, my name is Mika Newton. Welcome to the Exteriors podcast, Target Cancer. It's really about how technology and knowledge is changing the world for cancer patients and their physicians. And we're joined today by Molly Marco. Molly, tell us a little about you and your story.
Sure. In July 2016, I had a very busy day. I went to the gym. Actually, I ran to the gym. I walked home from the gym.
Wow.
I went to work. I went on my lunch break. And my big thing is coffee. I'm kind of obsessed with it. And it was fancy coffee, too, not like a Folgers Starbucks person, like fancy coffee. And I walked to a coffee shop in downtown Detroit on my lunch break and was talking to the barista, and then all of a sudden I felt nauseous and I put my head down, which is really, really weird. I don't do that very often. I don't feel that way very often. And next thing I know, I'm on the floor and there's EMS asking me questions. And I was at the moment very mortified, terrified, because I just was so embarrassed too. I was like, oh my gosh, someone had too much caffeine today. And I just thought I fainted, but and I was like, well, I wanted to go back to work. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I need to call my boss. I need to call the office and tell them I'm running late because I fainted. And they're like, no, you're going to emergency and you're going to go take this ambulance and go there because we think you had a stroke or a seizure and we need to find out. And I just, at the moment I laughed because I honestly thought they were ridiculous. And then when I got up, I felt kind of nasty because I had a concussion and that did not feel good. But yeah, that day, after a bunch of testing, I did not have a stroke, but I did have a seizure. They found a brain tumor the size of an avocado pit in my left temporal lobe.
Wow.
And that was very shocking.
I was just going to say that must have been incredibly shocking to you.
Yeah, especially if you feel well. Like sometimes people have symptoms that they begin to suspect are something, or what I thought was a seizure until then was not what I actually had. Like seizures come in a whole array. I don't even think that's the word, but they come in an array of ways, and they don't look the way they do in movies necessarily. Maybe a grand mal, but like for the most part, and then in retrospect, we realized that I had been having those for in specs, maybe for over a decade before that. Like I probably had a low grade glioma for some time before it kind of powered up and came to life. But I'd been having seizures before.
Yeah. In retrospect, what were those like when you learned something, right? So you realized that something had been happening before. What was that was kind of happening before? That you
usually when I was having some stress or anxiety, I would faint. And it only happened a few times, but it did happen. And I would feel kind of nauseous and just faint. But then I would come back to it and feel like everything was normal. Nobody ever suspected it was anything else. But it hadn't happened a lot, but it would happen. And I just think they were like little call outs. There's something up. I had other things like word and memory issues getting worse with time. But I just, certain things like anyone could have those. You don't necessarily know when that becomes more important or less important. Like, is this normal? Did I just not sleep good? And as swelling in my brain got worse as the tumor was growing, I know that's when stuff was getting bad. I remember having a panic attack in a post office for my passport because I couldn't remember like where I was born. I know where I'm born, but I know where I was born. But I just couldn't find the words in my head. And I remember panic calling my mom and asking her, she's like, how do you not know where you're born? You were born in Detroit. You were born, X, Y, and Z. But I couldn't remember the words and I couldn't say them. It's usually when I'm panicked is when I can't remember very simple things, names. And in my case, after the surgery, it was my short-term memory is bad and my name recovery is very bad. So, but I'm pretty healthy otherwise. It's brains are weird. So that's that.
So did you know anything about brain tumors or brain cancer kind of before any of this happened? What level of experience had you had?
Well, people in my parents' generation didn't really talk about it. So apparently I have a whole family line of brain tumors. and brain cancers, but they didn't talk about it. So I didn't really know. I knew about vaguely of glioblastoma because of all the celebrity and politicians with that, but I didn't have much knowledge. And I thought of all the cancers possible, I would never have that one, because don't you have to have headaches to have a brain tumor? Like, it never occurred to me that was last on the list of things I suspected. And yet in my head, I thought the worst possible one I could think of was brain. And what do I end up with? Brain. I never would have thought in a million years.
So where did you go to like learn? Was it the doctors in the hospital system? Were there other resources? Like, how did you start and you and your loved ones, your family, like, how did you guys work through this situation?
So I'm big on social media. That is my jam. I'm good at it. I like it. I'm 41 now, but I'm like right at that in between generations where I'm still like into it, but I'm not. I love it. I enjoy it. I get pretty positive things from it. So I just ask. I'm big on Twitter. I'm big on Instagram. I'm big on Facebook. It was actually Twitter that helped me the most. I love my hospital. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of my health system, but they were amazing, and they introduced me to some events. So I go to Henry Ford Health System in Detroit. I have an amazing team, and that first diagnosis is extremely overwhelming. And I thought I had a benign brain tumor the whole time. And so when it came out as astrocytoma grade 3, I didn't know what that meant. I know that in my mind, anything after a 2, 1 and 2 are the good ones, 3, 4 bad ones. Now over time, I understand things a lot better, especially the brain. But at the time, I was like, I'm dying, like I need chemo. Just the idea of chemo, like I'm dying. Radiation, I'm really dying. All the things, I was freaked out. I met my neuro-oncologist briefly before I got my diagnosis. I was introducing, but like, I think they all had an idea of but they're not going to tell you what they think, because they don't want to be wrong, but they also don't want to freak you out either. You still got a surgery coming up. I met my neuro-oncologist. I don't even have a memory of that until he called me with my diagnosis. And he's the nicest person on the face. And however he told me my diagnosis was like the most calm, gentle, like if there's a way to be positive with a cancer diagnosis, he was amazing. And he told me I could come into the office and talk to him, and he would answer any questions. He could come in any time that day, and he and the nurse navigator were going to like talk me through this and help me, and I could bring my family with me, my boyfriend, and that happened. That he just described the diagnosis, the treatment, what we were going to do from here, and that's very overwhelming. So a lot of things as a patient go in one ear and out the other, because you're just like, so especially if you're shocked. Some people aren't shocked because they kind of already know the symptoms or what they're like. Usually with other cancers, I believe surgery is something that comes after, right? Like you'd usually do like your chemo first and then maybe surgery and then maybe radiation. But for brains, it's if you can do the surgery, you do the surgery first. Unless you don't need the surgery and you do the radiation or something. But I don't know what I'm saying right now anymore. But like it was different. I had the surgery, I healed really quickly, and then it was radiation stat. Radiation full steam ahead, and chemo, which is in my case temozolomide. And it's very overwhelming in any case when you're approached. And then I got involved with a Twitter account called BTSM chat, hashtag BTSM, which is brain tumor social media. And they were inspired to start with when they saw brain cancer social media or breast cancer social media. So it started with BCSM, and BTSM is what I'm involved with. And that's how I heard about things like Head to the Hill, Head for the Cure. Actually, Head for the Cure is big with my hospital, so I heard about Head for the Cure through them. I want to learn as much as I could possibly learn. So I was getting involved with ABT, American Brain Tumor Association. Then because of Head to the Hill, the National Brain Tumor Society, Immerman Angels, where you can link patients with some. I'm active with all of those things because I want to learn as much as possible and help as much as possible, and that helps when you're diagnosed with something that's kind of scary and terrifying, it's real easy to like cluster yourself up too, especially older people, I find. For me, I'm a social person and I need to talk and I want to help people. And helping people makes me feel less alone, but it helps other people feel less alone. And yeah, so that's what I do. And I'm also, because of brain stuff, I'm also with things that talk about death and dying and that process as well, because I think that's really important. So that's end well.
Mhm. So as you considered the treatment options, like your team was informing you, we're going to be doing this or that, this is what we want to do. Were you involved in that decision making as well? Like, were you kind of part of that, or?
I don't think I have their tumor board. I mean, I did their searches, like, so I went to another hospital, and their treatment would have only been slightly different. There's only like two or three real treatments for my particular tumor. So I went the most aggressive route. We treated mine as if it was glioblastoma. I think there's like a PC without the T or PCB without the B. I don't know. That's another thing. But I did something called temozolomide. So yes, they had their tumor board. They told me what they would do, and I shopped around. But ultimately, most people are just going to end up doing what I did anyway. So I just went the route, and it's pretty common.
And did you kind of validate that on social media? Was that kind of the interaction with the other patients?
Yeah, it seems like basically like the only thing people are really doing, unless you do the ketogenic diet. I do know one gentleman who did. He kind of cut his radiation short. He had the same diagnosis as I do. Actually, the worse mutation. He has the IDH1 wild type. I have the mutant. So he did have. I guess I do like little quotation marks. Worse. They're all bad. But he had the Astro 3, but he had the wild type, which would now put him in the class of glioblastoma. But he's many years, like, no evidence of disease, and he does but when he does the ketogenic diet, he doesn't just do it like, I don't eat carbs. He like does it full on strict. He takes the blood work. He does the finger pricks. He's real strict with it. And I feel like that's the only way to do that really well, because doing it kind of nakedly is just hard. And so I don't do that. But yes, there are other ways, but like.
Yeah, wouldn't be the ketogenic diet if you wasn't really ketogenic, right?
Yeah, full on. And like, it's not just pee strips, it's like full on, like getting shots, getting blood work, seeing his like up and downs and whatever. And most people don't do that, but some people still can do it well. Men seem to do well, women not so much. I don't know if it's like a thing or just I'm hung all the time, so it's not my thing.
So just in terms of the information community, any advice for people like going in to see their physicians, like of information or knowledge they should have, or technology they should be aware of, like anything that really stood out, maybe something you wish you did differently, or that you did that was like, you're like, oh, I'm really glad I did that.
Yeah, I actually do think I don't like Facebook groups for cancers, just because they tend to be like depressing, and a lot of people just find them very difficult. But I do think social media is huge, and I don't know if that's what you mean, but like social media, like legit accounts, and you can always find like someone on Twitter, like a doctor or an organization, and those places are really helpful. They're also on Instagram, but I do find Twitter to be extremely helpful, at least on navigating, and that's how I found most of the things. Like in my case, the American Brain Tumor Association, National Brain Tumor Society, Head for the Cure, Head to the Hill, Imran Angels. Those are all great, and they're great for helpers, and they help connect you with people in similar situations. And I feel like that's really helpful. And that's how you find out sometimes, like, oh, like, the Optune device for a glioblastoma patient. Like, you might not have any interaction with, especially if you're in like a rural community, like maybe in northern Michigan, or you're like down south somewhere, but you're not by a major cancer center. You won't know about these things. And you're like oncology people maybe will, but like maybe they won't, or maybe you can just ask. But that's why I use all those accounts, like all the social media accounts. Find them, and they can help. Even pancreatic, like my mom and my aunt had pancreatic cancer and passed away, so I'm getting
I'm sorry.
involved with pancreatic cancer stuff, like just to know, like, am I at risk? Because that's weird. That and I also want to know about, like, that's another thing, because not every general practitioner will know what to lead you to. So if you find a social media account, they tell you that about there's some kind of like study or research, or like, send me a link so I can send my general practitioner a link, and I can, or ask questions.
Can you talk a little about the emotional journey and maybe some support? How did that go? I can imagine this is just a really difficult thing emotionally as well.
What was that? I just missed the top part
Okay.
of the question.
Could you talk? What was your emotional journey? What was the emotional journey like, and what support did you get there? How did you go through that?
I find at first I'm really loud and about with my feelings and stuff on all the media, so I don't struggle with that. But that it's very shocking at first, and you don't even know where to start. I was just, the minute I was diagnosed, I put it on social media. I'm like, hey, like, everyone knew I had a brain tumor. Everyone had a WADA test. They knew, like, the WADA test. By the way, I could talk to you about for like more about how cool the WADA test is. They turn off one side of your brain and the other side of the brain. But also, like, neuroscience. Like, I was just talking. Anytime I had something done before surgery, I was talking about it. I wanted to, like, have my picture taken with my brain wrap, like, after surgery. Like, I was always, like, talking about it. And, I was waiting for my results. So everyone on my social media was waiting for my results too. And when so I just broke it right away. I'm like, well, I have cancer, and I did not expect that. It is called, at the time it was called anaplastic astrocytoma. They have now negated the anaplastic from the WHO 2021 grading changes. But I thought I was dying, like that. And I didn't really understand it. And then at the time I had a general practitioner who I don't have now. She left, but she was shocked with my diagnosis, and she was kind of weepy with me too about it. So I really thought I was dying. So I had to call my neuro-oncologist, and I go, I need to talk to you. Like, am I dying? Like, I'm okay. Like, just tell me, am I dying? What's the real thing? He's like, well, he kind of explained, yeah, we do kind of give you like the most easiest way to approach it. But, if you want to know, I can tell you more. I'm like, I want to know the stats. I want to know. And then it turned out, like, I, for a while, considered myself a terminal brain tumor patient. I mean, on one level, if you want to look at that way, you can. And some people cope with it that way. But now I no longer consider it terminal until it's terminal. You know what I mean? Like, we can't fix it right now, but over time, I coped with it. But I kind of had to come to that feeling on my own. Like, for me, I kind of went like the darkest way possible to start, and I was like, well, I'm dying. Well, now I'm like, now, maybe. We all are anyway, so that's another way I took to approach it. Like, to me, I've always been into, like, death and dying anyway. Long before diagnosis, I was a weird little kid pulling out books on, like, near-death experiences and all that weird stuff, like where the library lady would have to call my mom, make sure, like, it was okay and I'm not going to jump out the window or anything. I just like that stuff. So for me, it was processing that way. Now, I'm very upbeat and I'm very positive and very happy to be alive, but, like, it took a while to get there. I tended to be pretty dismal, and I loved to, like, my first time talking to people, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to die. Like, totally be like, I'm terminal. Like, I don't know why I thought it was like a cool thing, but it's a way to get people to listen to. Somehow, if you have a story where people think you're dying, you're, like, way more interested. And as a kid who always liked attention and wanted to be on stage, yeah, that's a great way to get, like, the cameras on you, right?
Well, I'm really glad you're here, Molly, sharing the story with us. Just I'm really happy about that. Maybe you brought it up, and actually, I don't know. It was first time for me, but maybe just as last thing, tell us about this WADA test as maybe the last thing. You said it sounded cool. I don't know what that is. So
it's not supposed to be cool, apparently. Like, it's not something that they don't like to do terribly often, I think, because it is a high risk. You can have a stroke and you can die doing a WADA test. But they didn't tell me too much about it, just because I'm left-handed, and my tumor was in my deep left temporal lobe. So it would probably have to do with the quality of the surgery and whether I needed to be awake or not. And so I did this test. So I had no information really on it other than like, you know, it'll take about an hour and a half or something. But what they do is they turn off one side of your brain, ask you a bunch of questions. Well, they ask you a bunch of questions and they turn off that side of your brain, and then they ask you questions. They let you like ease out of the thing where your brain starts, you know, that brain starts to like work again, and then they ask you the same questions. Then they like let you recover for a half hour or so, and then they turn off the other side of the brain. I remember when they turned off, I believe it was the left side first, and you know they ask you questions, and I don't remember my answers. I just remember thinking like she would hold up a picture of like a bear. What do you see? And I'd be like, a bear, and she'd be like, no, and I'm like, a bear, and she'd be like, no. I'm like, what am I saying that is not what I think I'm saying? Like, what is my brain like thinking? The best part was when she would ask me to say the days of the week, and I'd be like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and she's like, no. And then like 5 minutes later, she was like, say it again, you know, like after she's like, I said it again the same exact way. She's like, no, we'll try again. I'm like, what am I saying? And then eventually in my head, I go, well, I'm going to mix it up. And I said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In my head, that's how I changed. Then she goes, yes. And I'm like, well, I just still to this day wonder what I was saying for that was different than like, because to me, those are both right. And then when they turned off the right side of my brain, I just remember counting backwards and then waking up with like tears on my side, but feeling really good. Like I had the tears on my face, but I felt like I had just been laughing for a while. And when I'm looking around, all the doctors are like taking like the thing out of my femoral artery. They're like, you know, there's blood everywhere, but they're laughing. The neurologist is laughing. Everyone's laughing. I'm like, what just happened? And they said, you were just really funny. I go, what did I say? They're like, you were just really funny, and they didn't tell me. And apparently I had a great time when they shut off that side of the brain. To me, that was awesome. I would do it again if it didn't have such a
Yeah, I'm not sure I would recommend that. Well, Molly, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your experience with anyone. Thank you so much.
Well, keep me posted. And thank you so much for patience with my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. Nice to meet you. Bye. If you or someone you know has advanced cancer and needs to make a treatment options decision, please click on the link in the bio and sign up for the XCure's free information and options service.